many parents don't do the diet because they believe the cure is so close that they don't need to do it. And that's what is absolutely abnormal.
Welcome to the Fat Emperor podcast. I'm your host, Ivor Cummins. We're supported by the Irish Heart Disease Awareness Charity, which advocates a simple CT scan to reveal your CAC score. So, know your score and take action to prevent that premature heart attack. Everything you need to know will be right here. Sybille Kraft-Bellamy, great to meet you here in Denver.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, not at all. Well, you have a very fascinating story, which I was enthralled by, and around your son having Angelman Syndrome.
That's correct, yes. Angelman Syndrome.
Yeah, and I thought that was extremely rare, but actually around 1 in 8,000 is not quite so rare at all, really.
No, it's not. And I think it's maybe even higher than that. But many children are not diagnosed properly, or some adults who are not diagnosed properly. So they may have a form of CP or autism. So I think sometimes they even go to 8,000 here.
Right, okay. Now it's quite a profound disability. And of course, the reason I was particularly interested in the story is the dependency on a ketogenic diet to greatly improve the symptoms. Now, from talking to you, it appears that the ketogenic diet is a dramatic improvement of the symptoms, not just a minor help.
Yes, totally. It's the first thing is the most effective with the diet is to control the seizure. So we have really good control of the epilepsy, like over 90%. In our case, 100%. So max is only on the diet, not taking any medication. But there is a lot of other aspects that the diet help with condition with syndrome like Angelman syndrome.
Right, and perhaps if we go back a step to originally when you had Max and you discovered, maybe just that story of how you discovered, you diagnosed the problem, whether it was diagnosed rapidly or maybe late, and how you actually worked your way towards diet as a solution. I believe actually your mother's advice or someone in your life was involved.
Yes, totally, yeah. Well, Max had a health problem starting at birth. He was born preemie and he was on oxygen, and his development was abnormally slow. And he was on oxygen his first 6 months of life. He had a lot of gain problem and pneumonia by aspiration, a lot of different kind of respiratory distress were very, very important and life-threatening in many times. And my mother was the first one telling me that a child like him would have a diet pretty strict in some way, and be sure never give him any sugar, because it was literally poison for a child that's fragile. She was the first one really telling me not to give him sweet products and avoid as much as possible everything white, like potatoes, rice, things like this.
Right, and that's kind of interesting because, you know, we often say with obesity that our grandmothers and the old wisdom was kind of avoid the starchy foods for, say, obesity. But your mother, she was quite adamant on this. Where did she get this idea herself? Is it just a kind of a cultural, historical knowledge, or?
There is a mix of cultural, because in France we do use, diet is still a very important part of your health. It's considered being like even crucial to be healthy. But in my mother's case, she was still this generation where diet was real treatment, was medication. And she had, during World War II, some of the family were deported. When they came back, the one who survived had this major health problem with like tuberculosis, typhus, and other really serious condition. And the way they were treated were in 1944, 45, antibiotics are not there, and they were treated with diets. And my mom was always telling me that being very young at that time, she loved to help the doctor to prepare some meal for one of her uncle. And it's obvious he was fasting. He had a lot of broth, and it always had to be with like meat, bone marrow or raw eggs and cream. And she really remembered well what the doctor was saying at that point, what he needed to eat. And she always when I was a child, I used to love to listen to her because she was telling me that the doctor in the morning was like coming and smell the breath, check the urine, but check, when I said check, like taste urine, and smell the breath. And I thought it was really interesting because he was in ketosis. So obviously she never learned the word ketosis or whatever, but that was the way he was treated. And he died, he was 85 years old. So.
Right, and they were actually looking for the smell of acetone on the breath.
Yep.
Without fully understanding why acetone would indicate that the person's in a very good physiological state. Wow, and the urine as well. I'm not sure. I know.
I have no idea.
We won't go there, but I know for in the early days of diabetes, like centuries ago, maybe 1,000 years ago, they would taste the urine for the sugar because that was a clear sign of diabetes. I'm not sure if you can taste ketones, but in any case, we'll move on. So this cultural knowledge, it sounds like they were doing a ketogenic diet to help with people's illnesses in the absence of medicines before there really were medications that would work very well, and they didn't even know what they were doing. But bone broth, highly nutrient dense foods, meats and like I suppose eggs and fish, they kind of knew to stay away from empty carbohydrates and grains. Okay. Right. So your mother then was able to tell you this with Max and did you start that pretty much straight away? What kind of happened?
I did almost, right away. When he started eating was regular food. He had a very dense food product, like I give him like sardines very early, and I was always mixed tank with butter and avocado. So right away he had very like what I call today his brain food, very young age for sure. And I was already giving him syringes of oil.
Oh, okay, orally syringed oil, because he also, again, Angelman Syndrome, there would be difficulty feeding, quite significant challenges.
Which was his case. He was he was choking very easily. And I had to kind of adapt because he didn't eat well with a spoon. He didn't want to eat as much as he should be eating. And at that point, some of the doctor wanted him to have a feeding tube, which I refused. And I just prepare his regular meal and put it in a bottle because he was fine with the bottle, and I cut the top of the nipple. And he was, everything in a bottle, he was taking it. So his weight stabilized and went up, and everything went better and better.
Right, and you mentioned to me as well, Sybille, that this is genetically identified, and he actually had a genetic or genotype, a very serious form of the disease, which should have fairly profound problems with fits and everything. But the phenotype then is your environment, how much you express the challenges and symptoms. So you very early on were getting him to have a lack of serious symptoms that was out of step with his genotype, which said he should have severe problems.
Yeah, totally. Like for the epilepsy, usually it's the deletion form that he has. It's very often the one who have a pharmacoresistant epilepsy from the young age and even adulthood, which we don't have with Max. He started having some seizure pretty late because I started feeding him very young, the way we were talking about, so high fat. So he only had a couple of seizures in his life only when he was sick with fever and dehydration.
And that, of course, disturbs the glucose balance and homeostasis.
Electrolyte, everything, yeah. This is the key for children like him. If they stay well hydrated with extra electrolytes, plus the diet. He had flu a couple of times with high fever. He had strep. He had like major illness and no seizure. But it is definitely like some work at that point, mostly at the beginning. You have to understand and see what he needs and when he needs it. So it's a lot of observation. But if you keep as soon as you detect fever or as soon as you know that there is a virus or somebody else is sick, we go in our protocol, keto protocol, and he has to drink a lot. I prepare 1 liter of just water and electrolyte. I put a timer on and I just squeeze in his mouth. Every 10 minutes he's gonna have 20 ml, and it's just the way we goes. And we avoid seizure. not only will avoid seizure, he's usually the one who recovered the fastest. They had like rotavirus a couple of weeks ago in my house, and the two other boys were decimated. They were like crawling on the floor. It was really bad. And he's the one, obviously, we gave him the priority. And he had like the standard of care, like top. So he got sick, like everybody else, but one day. And the day after, he was fine. He was just looking at everybody. He was like, what's your problem?
Excellent. So you really, from the very start, you were right onto an excellent ketogenic protocol. So you never really had to suffer the major issues. You did mention, though, that I think in a hospital once a mistake was made and it caused a major issue.
Yeah. Well, that was my mistake, not telling them that he was on ketogenic diet. And we came because he was dehydrated. And I wanted him to have an IV to rehydrate him a little faster. But I forgot to say that he was on a diet. So he had an IV with glucose. And it was like, I think less than 2 minutes, he had the worst seizure we never saw. And it was a hard seizure. It took us almost 2 weeks to really recontrol the whole, I mean, his brain to shut down the seizure. It took a while.
Wow. So that must have been very upsetting indeed. But it shows that you must stick to the protocol pretty religiously and you can't veer off it at all. And you spoke as well about trials that were done, small-scale trials. And I think you said 90% effective was the diet in a range of children, but also the 10% where it was not effective, you suspected that the protocol was maybe not being fully followed. So maybe a little on that trial.
It's possible that it was not well prescribed. It's possible that it was not well followed, and it's possible the child had specific microbiota at that point which didn't help the diet to be as effective. Our children take so much medication since the time they're born, so much antibiotic, steroid. This has for sure a major impact on the microbiota. So I believe for some of them, the diet doesn't work as well because there is a shift in their microbiota that we do not allow them to follow the regular ketogenic diet. More data, more sample and analyze should be done to see exactly what's going on with their microbiota, to see how we can adjust the diet. They may have like inflammation or allergy with some vegetables, some fruits, some dairy, some eggs, but this should be done.
Yeah, I think the lion's share of work, and again, there's no conspiracy per se, but the lion's share of effort in these diseases is towards finding a pharmaceutical or similar cure. And there's very little funding generally for diet-based things. It's just the way the system works. So I think you had some frustration coming up against this challenge. You obviously have had massive success with the diet. You have many friends who have children with Angelman syndrome. They are having similar success without drugs. Most of these kids like Max and your colleagues, they're pretty much not using drugs, just diet?
Just diet, yeah.
Just diet. So you've got all this huge relief of the symptoms and would like to share it with the world. But what was your experience when you dealt with the professionals and the medical system a few years ago in Boston, I think?
Well, they all for the diet. They believe it is the first line of treatment and it should be the first line of treatment for many of our kids. But unfortunately, it's not. Why? There is a lack of communication. Still at that day, if you go on the major website of the Angelman Syndrome Foundation, if your child just got diagnosed, you don't know anything much about even the syndrome. You go on this website, you're not going to find, it's going to be very hard to find the diet. You really have to look for it. So my point is, when you arrive on the website, you're not going to have this like blinking like information saying that the diet should be started as the same way you're going to start PT, OT, all this like therapy. It should be started very early, and also that people should be informed about it. But most of the time they're not. If they are today, it's because of social network.
Yeah, that is changing everything. It's quite interesting that I agree with you, it should be front and center in the Angelman societies that, okay, testimonials, some of the science explaining it, and showing how this is a crucial intervention. And maybe you need some drugs as well if you don't respond incredibly to the diet. But to let people know front and center, and then the drugs are secondary. But it's horse and cart are the wrong way around. It's similar actually in parallels with low carb and keto diets in general. Like the British Dietetic Association are very strong to come out and say, well, we acknowledge low carb diets in 2011, on the record. They used to fight them. But now in 2019, if you go on their website, right, for diabetes, it's buried. The low carb is just buried. It's there for the record, but it's buried.
Yep.
So
same thing.
It's same kind of thing. So you found with these professionals that they are more focused on developing a cure. And I think you told me that they really all believe in America that they can find a cure, and therefore they're just less interested in the diet because they're going for the magic bullet.
Yeah, totally. Which is, after that, I really think it's everybody believe, every parents have the right and the choice to believe in any form of treatment or to do any kind of therapy. I don't think it's the problem. The problem is to not do the diet first, because this is working. In 2019, we know it works very well for a long time now. So it should be done immediately. And after that, research or cure or whatever on the side, that's fine. But many parents don't do the diet because they believe the cure is so close that they don't need to do it. And that's what is absolutely abnormal.
Hey guys, just a quick break to remind you that this podcast is only possible due to funding from the Irish Heart Disease Awareness Charity and its founder, David Bobbitt. David discovered he had massive heart disease in 2012 and could only do so by getting a 5-minute calcification scan and CAC score. It enabled him to take action to stop the disease process and to save his own life. Now he is spending millions to help others do likewise. All we ask is to help get the message out on the power of CAC, watch the Widowmaker movie linked at the end of this podcast, and share it as widely as you can. Thank you, and now we return to the conversation. Yeah, that is frustrating because their faith it's interesting that they have such faith, because the reality is with drug development for genetic diseases, it has been extremely disappointing in the last 20 or 30 years. There have been advances for sure, but compared to the great hope of genetics 20, 30 years ago in the genome, it's actually been hugely disappointing. So I think a rare disease, complex and genetic like this, it could be decades before there's a substantial move forward. And right now there's a diet that appears in everyone who does it properly to offer enormous relief to the people with Angelman's. Totally. And it's not getting out there. Hopefully this will help get it out there more. Something occurs to me now, Sybille, that I've been obviously pushing the low carb diet and keto diet perhaps for diabetes and for heart disease, people who have profound heart disease. And there's a lot of resistance. But we've got diabetes, heart disease, we have epilepsy now for a low-carb keto diet, Angelman's. I met a guy in San Diego, rare disease, glycogen storage disease. His life was transformed when he went to keto diet, from being able to be out of breath walking 10 feet to actually jogging a kilometre or two slowly. His life was transformed. I could go on and on. People think the keto diet is primarily for drug-resistant epilepsy, and the orthodoxy kind of acknowledge that quietly. But we could list more and more conditions, profound conditions, where it can be transformational. And many depressive disorders as well, it's becoming increasingly apparent. So the keto diet needs to really get out there more and be embraced by physicians, even if they just try it out. But,
exactly.
Yeah.
And mostly in pediatric.
Pediatric.
They're young body who are forming to become an adults. So medication are not helping all the other aspects that Angelman syndrome can have, like sleeping disorder, osteoporosis, muscle problem, gastrointestinal reflux. The list is so long. A kid like Max he was sick all the time when he was a child. He had all these very weak muscles, so he had a lot of pneumonia. He was always had this very shallow breathing, no real muscle to function properly. No energy. His muscle didn't receive the proper energy they needed to be as effective that they should be. So today, Max is a very strong 17 years old boy, no respiratory problem anymore, no scoliosis, no osteoporosis, no acid reflux, no constipation. All these aspects in Angelman syndrome, constipation is one of the main triggers for epilepsy for some children. So it's very severe, and on the side that it's like painful, uncomfortable, and it goes with sleeping disorder. It's gonna have an impact on their mood, on so many aspects, and all of that with Max is absolutely being normal.
Wow, so pretty much all of the severe symptoms of Angelman's are largely controlled with this ketogenic
Yes.
diet. And when you step outside it, as we know, there's an immediate crisis, immediate problems. The nature of the diet then, maybe just describe for the viewer very briefly the nature of the diet and what's in it, roughly.
Okay. Well, the main diet was developed for Angelman syndrome at the beginning, who works very well and very easy, is the LGIT.
Right, that's low glycemic
Index treatment.
index treatment, gotcha.
Yes. So it's one of the most liberal diets in all the ketogenic diet. We're entitled to have between 40 to 60 grams of carbs, but the glycemic index have to be under 50. And in our case, we did this for many years on the side of extra help with MCT oil, so medium chain triglyceride and extra coconut oil. And getting older, he started having his puberty started to come in, and he started having a muscle-wise and body-wise need of more energy. So we switched to a more regular ketogenic diet, a 3:1 ratio. But he's getting close to a modified Atkins or modified ketogenic diet. He's a boy who loves meat, and he has a lot of protein in his diet.
Yeah, well, meats are very nutrient dense as well. So anyone with any condition, and even person with no condition particularly, nutrient density is so important. So it's great that he likes those nutrient dense foods. And you avoid, of course, no vegetable oils, anything like that. But omega-3 and cod liver oil.
Yeah, that he had that every day, yeah. He do have some extra seeds or nut oil, walnut, pistachio. Mostly where I live right now, walnut oil is done like locally.
But again, that's not a vegetable oil in an industrial process. That's crushed real, like olive oil, real oil.
Exactly, yeah, it's pretty thick product. You can see it's very intense.
So a real foods, nutrient dense, ketogenic diet, and just very careful to stick to it and not step outside. Well, I have another topic now, not another topic, but just a related thing. You mentioned a couple of days ago that in France, perhaps in contrast to America, the official bodies, maybe hospitals, maybe government, are actually open to supporting this. That's interesting.
Yes, yes. I just created an association named Connexion Cétogène. It's an association who will be able to give information and support for patients or parents or the medical community to start a diet in a proper way, in a safe way, effective way. So in France, we have many centers have already like a ketogenic department. In our association, we have an epileptologist, neurologist, we have research people in brain and spine. We have research people in the microbiota. And we just started like 2 months ago, and we just started to send our explanation to hospital and people who represent major association in France from autism and other medical condition. And I was just amazed by how quickly they answer back and how positive they were. We are in this month, we're invited in a major like nutrition hospital. They want us to present the diet. Major like symposium in Paris about nutrition. They invite us to present the diet. And people at the government level are extremely interested by what we're doing. And we even went in, our nutritionist went to an hospital close by where she lives, and she explained what we would like to do, to have like a service where people can come and have consultation with a medical practitioner, and a kitchen when they can have workshop. And we were pretty like kind of getting ready to have a negative answer, or at least we have to push more. And the only thing the conversation ending was, how much do you want and when can you stop?
Wow.
Which was like, oh my God.
That is fantastic,
Yeah.
and that is such a rare thing to occur. Ketogenic diet, you're much more likely to see newspaper articles like we saw last week, keto crotch, and all these scaremongering articles, than to actually be embraced for deploying keto to help people. So that's amazing. I guess vive la France might be what I might say there. Cliche, I know.
I think French like fats. They're not scared of fats. It's something that's so part of our diet that, and again, culturally, people are agree that we eat too much sugar. That's a fact. Everybody's agree with that. And everybody is agree that sugar doesn't bring anything. This is like a mainstream knowledge. People know that to eat a cake, it's not, nutritionally it doesn't bring you anything. It's not what you need to be healthy and just go to work. It's not what you need.
Yeah, in France culturally as well, a lot of high-fat foods, and Gascony, and the foie gras, the duck, the terrines, the pâtés. The gastronomy in France is incredible, and most of it actually, if you look through the Bible of gastronomy, I was told by Professor Feynman once, every second page is a low-carb recipe, only they don't call it low-carb, keto. Mm-hmm. But it's just, I'm going there on holidays, by the way, to Villefranche in the middle of the summer with my 5 kids, and I can't wait. So I love France. I'll put that on the record. So this is incredible, though. This is being embraced by government officials and hospitals and dietitians, a keto diet to actually help people.
Yeah.
And in contrast, in 2013, I think in Boston, you gave a talk, but very little has happened in America for you over the years. Relatively,
yeah, not that much. I went to the Congress. I met a couple of congressmen and senators, and I explained what I thought would be a priority. Like when a child is being diagnosed under the age of 3 in the United States, you have a program named Early Intervention. So every children is entitled to receive in their home help from physical therapists, speech therapists, whatever they need. And my goal at that point was to put nutrition immediately at the same time, that they have consultation with a dietitian. Because if a child is being diagnosed and is entitled to receive early intervention, that means there is a disease or a syndrome that the child is going to need extra help for not being healthy, to be healthy again, or like in my son's case, just to get over the syndrome, to have a better quality of life. And I present them, and they were interested. They were just like pleasantly polite and listened, but didn't went anywhere further than that.
No interest, yes. Sadly. So France, it sounds like, may be where you can spearhead this venture to get this available for all of these kids, and not just with Angelman, but with all the other conditions that could benefit, even beyond epilepsy and glycogen storage. There are probably many more rare conditions where the stability, the glucose stability, the benefits of the ketones neurologically, where there could be, mitigation of many other diseases once the orthodoxy embraces this as a powerful tool rather than some kind of fad diet. So I think that's probably a positive note to finish on, that yes. Going forward, your leadership is fantastic, Sybille, fascinating story, extraordinary leadership you're showing, and we'll try and get the message out in as much as we can.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Sybille.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see my subscribe button in the middle of the screen, a free viewing of the Widowmaker movie on the far right, and myself and Dr. Gerber's book, Eat Rich, Live Long, on the left. Otherwise, please do subscribe to the audio podcast. Thanks.